As we mentioned earlier, we have two major sponsors for this event, being the National Bank and the Australian Government, Department of Education. And our next speaker is Helen Willoughby, who actually began her career as a journalist on the Gold Coast and moved to the Federal Parliament Press Gallery. She's been a ministerial staffer, a CEO of an industry association for outdoor media, a senior bureaucrat in the New South Wales and now in the federal government, and also did some work for Greenpeace Australia. Helen has served on a number of boards, including as a volunteer on the Women's Advisory Board of the Big Issue. She's also a part-time local with a farm at Tevan, on which she's regenerating rainforest. I love this. Federal Parliament, worked for Greenpeace, volunteer, Tevan regenerating rainforest. Perfect. So Helen's current role as the New South Wales ACT Manager for the Federal Departments of Employment and Education puts her directly in contact with individuals and organisations developing social enterprises. She's here to tell us a little bit about where government can play a constructive role, particularly in helping create jobs. Please welcome Helen Willoughby.
Thank you, Arnie, and I generally am not in a suit when I'm up here. I'm usually in farm clothes tackling weeds. But thank you very much for this afternoon, for the opportunity to speak. Can I just start this afternoon's session by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land in which we meet here this afternoon, and to extend my respects to elders past and present, and also to any elders who may be in the room with us here today. So, one of the things about government, and I've heard the last four speakers and some of the questions, and you hear things like, it's great when government actually doesn't need to get involved in terms of funding because, you know, that's showing that we're a successful enterprise. Or I heard about the NGOs and saying there's too many up here and we don't collaborate. These are all things that I think government deals with regularly, and I want to use two examples this afternoon of social enterprises with which I've been involved and which I think have been particularly successful because they have learned how to leverage government and corporate sector at various times of their growth and their development, and it's been a fascinating experience, and I've brought some props with me. So I guess there's three areas where I think government can help. One is obviously I do think funding's important at certain phases, particularly seed funding. Secondly, government can bring together players that you often can't bring together yourself, and that leveraging of corporates and NGOs and just bringing everybody to the table, and that's our local employment coordinator program, which I know many of you have worked with our LECs and our EPOs, our employment project officers, or even our ResJs, which are regional education skills and jobs coordinators. They're specifically targeted at working in regions to bring people together to help get outcomes. And the third area is certainly in the way we can promote successful projects, and also in our own purchasing power where we buy goods and services from social enterprise. So the first example I want to talk to is the one on which I am a volunteer advisory member of the Women's Board of the Big Issue. First props. Some of you, I don't know if they sell the Big Issue on street corners up here in the Northern Rivers, but they certainly do in Sydney and in Melbourne, in major cities. And I was lucky enough to be working for the City of Sydney when they first came to New South Wales and were after a licence to be able to sell in public spaces. And of course the Big Issue is a magazine that was set up to support homeless people to gain employment. And the magazine, they get to keep half of the proceeds. So I think it's now $6. They get to keep $3, and people also give, obviously give donations as well. It's not about, you can't actually call them employment projects so much as just helping them help themselves. And what it does for homeless people or people who are marginalised is it gives them that confidence or that next step to getting that permanent job or that part-time job that actually gets them out of homelessness and back into society. The thing about the Big Issue is it's got a CEO called Steve Person, who is incredibly driven and has had an incredibly visionary business plan in mind right from the beginning. So the Big Issue started as a magazine back in 1996, I think it was, when we gave the licence, or 97. Then I became involved when I was in my current role, where he then wanted to expand it to a women's business and to set up a women's enterprise, because women naturally, through their experiences, find it very hard to sell magazines on street corners. So we set up a subscription business, and they got $3 million in seed funding from Job Fund, which was a program that that came out of the Department of Employment. He also has a street soccer program in which not only does he, he so much doesn't get funding there, but he does involve politicians and he involves corporates to actually play soccer against homeless people. And then his next enterprise is even more exciting, and one that I'm really in love with, and it's about creating a private pool of funding to create social housing. And he's already talking to the NAB, and he's trying to get all the big banks involved, real estate institutes and so forth, based on a Californian project where any people who own houses or apartments would agree to donate something like 1% of the resale value towards a pool of funding that then becomes the source of funding for social housing. Because as you know, government is getting out of public housing and there's going to be a huge demand for it going forward. So this is one fantastic enterprise. He is also giving back himself by working with the major universities to help social entrepreneurs. So he's working with universities, and once a year they give an award out to the biggest idea. So, it's just a fantastic model. And as I said, he's leveraged funding when he's needed it. He uses government and he uses his contacts to bring people together. And it's just been a really successful story. The other one, I'll just get my second prop. This beautiful loaf of artisan bread. I think this one is olive with rosemary, which I'm happy to donate at the end. But this is called the Bread and Butter Project. And again, it came through it was part of the LEC program. It actually came through what is called our flexible funding pool, where the Burke Street Bakery is a very successful enterprise, commercial enterprise in Sydney. They're based in Surrey Hills, and they wanted to give something back. And they came to us about seed funding a project in which they train refugees to become bakers. And in artisan bakery, because they said artisan bakery is something where they're finding it harder to get skilled workers in this place. And at the same time, you've got refugee communities finding it very hard to access employment. So through some seed funding through the flexibility funding pool, we were able to bring together a number of players that allowed them to launch this project. And now they sell this bread. They know their market really well. They sell this bread pretty much in in places like David Jones and boutique bakeries, but they know their market in the sense that they know that socially aware people will actually pay a bit of a premium to buy because they know that they're giving back. So it's called the Bread and Butter Project. If anyone's interested, I just encourage you to seek it out and to have a look at what they did and what they're doing to actually keep this sustainable project going. And as I said, it's something that we continue to be involved with. We stay in touch with them. We bring them back as speakers to venues like this, just to constantly support them going through. They have not come to us asking for any more money. They may need it in the future, but that's the type of thing where I really believe that government can help. And can I just ask our LECs and EPOs in the room to stand up, because this will be my final prop, which is a live one. So we've got Terry and Christine, who I know many of you know, and I also know here we've got some Queensland ones here. Are they here? Gabrielle? She not? No? Is she not here at the moment? Oh, we thought we had some Queensland imports, but no, not here. But anyway, those local, all I say is that if you're actually looking at a project that you want funded or you've got an idea for social enterprise, please talk to Terry or talk to Christine. It's not an advertisement, but what I am saying is it's often better to collaborate and have one big project where we can actually come and back a successful outcome, rather than everybody trying to get in and get little bits of funding that just, and then nobody really wins out of that formula. So thank you, that's all I've got to say.